Greetings! I'm Rodger Newbold, and welcome to episode 16. 16 of Experienced Photography. My fellow photographer and my partner and editor for this episode is Matt Rich. Now, he's the man with the keyboard and, a whole boatload of monitors that makes this whole thing work. I just saw him out there filling up his cup full of ice. Are you back there, my friend? Where are you? There he is. In our most recent vlog, we spoke of wide-angle lenses and how to make a more powerful image using wide angles. We outlined 10 pointers that we believe will facilitate compelling images. We hope the images presented added some visual stimulation to you and to follow on with in making great images. Now today we're going to take a short or long or zoom look at examining telephoto or longer than normal focal length lenses. So what is a telephoto? As we discussed once, the camera lenses are defined by a comparison to the field of view which our eye naturally sees, which is about the same as a 50 millimeter on a full frame camera or about 35 on a crop sensor camera. Now, the angle of view of the normal focal length is about 46 degrees, and any narrower field of that is considered a telephoto. Now, get that, that's narrower. Not wider, narrower. That's a telephoto. Many of today's zoom lenses encapsulate longer focal length lenses in that arena. A 70 millimeter lens is very short for a telephoto, but it sees about 74 degrees and 43 on an APS-C sensor. When we attain 8 degrees, which would be a full frame 300 or a 200 millimeter on a crop, images begin generating new kind of significance. Let's take a bold step into the 500 or 330 millimeter crop. That's a 5-degree field of view. It's explosive, and the effects really unveil themselves, and you can just no longer sit there. You got to buckle up your seatbelt and be ready to fly. So figure 1 is the focal length chart. We'll take a look at figure 1 right there. Figure 2 is the telephoto angle of view chart. We also see that telephoto lenses appear to magnify distant objects. And to do that, they need to have an optical design with a narrow angle of view and a focal length longer than the normal lens. Longer the focal length, the more telephoto magnification there is. The most common telephoto lenses have a focal length, somewhere around 70 to 300. Any lens with a focal length longer than, say, 300 would be considered a super telephoto as well. Wow, there's a super telephoto. Basically, lenses can be fabricated in 2 different styles, either a prime lens or as a zoom lens. Now, what is a prime lens? Prime lens is a lens with a fixed focal length. What that means is simply it cannot zoom. It's just locked into its own singular perspective. Prime lenses come in many sizes and many focal lengths. One disadvantage of a prime is if you have a 200, It's always just a 200. It does not zoom. An advantage to the prime lens is there are fewer optical elements. And this keeps the weight and the cost down lower and more easily affordable. Now, fewer glass elements generate less optical diffraction as well, resulting in greater apparent sharpness, and maintains a fixed aperture or f-stop. Another advantage is there is no need for any kind of complex internal moving constituents. This keeps the lens barrel smaller in size. And finally, prime lenses may be constructed to a faster maximum f-stop or wider aperture. And they can do this without busting the bank and providing a smoother optical background blur or bokeh. Now, what's a zoom lens? What's the difference? A zoom lens is any lens that can vary its focal length and thereby vary its angle of view by physically moving optical elements inside the lens design. The term zoom does not actually correspond to any specific focal length range, despite sometimes being confused with the term of, a telephoto zoom or wide angle zoom. By effectively changing the angle of view and the focal length by moving elements inside the lens barrel gives us the effect of zooming in or out. And it has to also maintain a sharp image. Yes. Now, generally speaking, zoom lenses are not capable of the same wide apertures that prime lenses are capable of, such as 1.4 or 1.2. Although there are, thanks to modern computerized design, there are some new zooms that are getting very close to what we find in our prime lenses. Now, zoom lens magnification is not a reference to the actual reproduction magnification that the lens can achieve, but the optical magnification that happens between the widest end of the zoom range and the longest end. For example, let's take a 50 to 100 millimeter zoom. Now that lens would be a 2x zoom. And if we had a 50 to 150 millimeter zoom, that would be a 3x. And a 28 to 300 super zoom, on the other hand, would be just over a 10x zoom. So what are the pros of a zoom lens? A zoom lens decreases the number of lenses needed, while a telephoto lens reduces the size of the lens. Ease of zooming in and out helps you change your photo composition and take the perfect shot. If your subject moves, just zoom, either in or out. Make them properly fit the frame. Now, what are the cons of a zoom lens? Well, a zoom lens will only take a limited amount of light. This gives you a clear disadvantage if you're shooting in low light conditions. Zoom lenses also tend to have just a wee slight issue with sharpness. Most of them are less sharp than a competing prime telephoto lens. So which is better? Well, all of them, they're just hard to deny. It depends on your intended use and your needs. What is a telephoto or telezoom or long lens used for? Hey, they make subjects appear closer. Normally, everyone desiring a long lens thinks about that feature first. Telephoto lenses will help you take a picture of a subject that's, far away or impossible to get to. Let's take a look at figure number 3. Yeah, this is super. It's Matt's photograph of what we call Walder's Wiggle down in Zion. It would be impossible to take this picture without a long lens. They're from where you can see it to where the wiggles are. There's a big deep canyon in between. And unless you got a sky hook and can hang there, you're going to use a long lens. It's fantastic how it pulls the details clear in from across the canyon. Another superb use for a telephoto lens is for wildlife photography. It's hard to take a close-up of a squirrel or a bird or other animals that are afraid of us. There are also animals that we're a little afraid to get too close to. And for that, you really want a long lens. Remember that loud and unnatural shutter clicks from the camera might spook them and send them running. Let's take a look at figure number 4. Figure 4 was shot with a 70 to 300 zoom at 300. The compressive effect of very long lenses adds really an artistic look to the image. A perceived distance between you and the subject and the rest of the scene is dependent on two things: where you stand and relative to your subject to take the photograph, and the focal length of the lens that you choose. Let's take a look at figure number 5. This was a 400 millimeter 100 to 400 zoom shot at 400. If you take the two photos from the exact same place, one with a wide angle and one with a telephoto, they will have the same perceived distance from front to back. That's because the perspective does not change. To witness this, crop an image taken with a wide down to the same field of view as any telephoto. The quality of the crop will be horrible, but that's not the point. The point is that the crop's perspective will look identical to the telephoto shot. So you can use the compression of a lens to add an advantage to your understanding. And that distance between the camera and the subject is what causes this, may I say, distortion. It's beautiful. For example, if you're trying to take a portrait and there are a lot of distracting elements in the background, try using a long lens and stand back from your subject. Now, by stepping back, you can isolate your subject against a single element in the background instead of, a mass of clutter. And all you have to do is move your camera further away from the subject. The foreground and the background will appear closer together, and you can use this to create intimacy between your subject and the distance. Let's take a look at figure number 6 by Matt. This close relationship of the tree and the moon. Now, this was shot with a 100 to 400 zoom plus a 2x matched teleconverter equaling an 800 millimeter. Now, that's a lot of power. A highly flavored advantage of the telephoto lens is the fact that a photographer can remain rather anonymous, which is good in some circumstances. Let's take a look at figure number 7. Now remember, sneaky, underhanded, and illegal photographs may have dire penalties. Figure number 7 was shot with a 70-200 at 200. Number 5, telephotos may emphasize blurred backgrounds more than any other lens. Sure, every photographer loves creamy, soft, rounded, blurred background highlights, also known as bokeh. But when you can reach and catch a marvelous expression and display active bokeh from your telephoto, everyone goes home happy. Take a look at figure number 8. Yeah, perfect. It was a 70-300, zoomed all the way out to 300, shot at f5.6. When you want to recreate this effect, simply shoot with your long lens and use the widest aperture it can offer. The quality of bokeh that your telephoto lens can provide is quite amazing compared to, say, wide-angle lenses that we covered last week. Not surprisingly, telephoto lenses are very useful when you want to focus on smaller details. Now let's take a look at this given scene by Matt. It's figure number 9. This is Thor's hammer from Bryce Canyon. Now figure 10 reveals a close-up detail of Utah's Factory Butte. It was taken with a 300 millimeter lens and a 2x extender. It resulted in a focal length of 600 millimeters. Now, teleextenders are available in different magnification powers and are generally matched to work best with a particular lens. One big caution that I'm going to tell you right now. One big caution. They require a generous increase in exposure to compensate for all the extra glass elements that they contain. So be sure to follow the manufacturer's instructions. Figure number 10 is a detail using a 300 millimeter and a matched 2x extender. The telephoto can isolate details so well in certain landscapes that you'll be able to capture small sections of the scene, and it completely removes them from any kind of context in the very definition of a beautiful abstract image. Other times, even if you can't remove the context completely, you can still end up with a photo that focuses on shapes and patterns rather than a perfectly literal image on the scene. Take a look at figure number 11. Hidden Giants in the Forest by Matt. I'm a fan of abstract photos, and you may have discovered that even at dinner, if you have your camera with you, see figure number 12. They're all about the basics: light, color, shape, composition. If your viewer can't tell what a photo actually depicts, then the image becomes more about, underlying aesthetic qualities. The cello case was shot with a 70-300 at 300. Telephoto lenses are just the ticket for isolating subject matter in order to compare and analyze scale. The old rule applies here. You put big against small, busy against plain, colorful against drab. You use the tools creatively, like Matt did here in his hidden treasure, figure number 13. Now, figure 14 shows a photograph of the moon during an eclipse. This was shot with a 400 millimeter wide open at 5.6. Now, Depth of field is not much of a problem at 238,000 miles. But shutter speed may be, and a tripod selection is positively important. So get a hold of that. This was Moon Eclipse by my wife Ann Newbold. That was figure number 14. There are truly many more uses for telephoto lenses. Portraits, generally with short telephotos that range from about 85 to 135 millimeters, work really well in that arena. I'm sure you'll find the right lens for any situation if you just pay attention. There's always more than one right answer. Pick another focal length. Get a new point of view. There's always another right answer. Wary photographers begin to anticipate or see objects and then reframe them into better opportunities. Just remember to formulate images full of passion. Passion. They will carry your concept or your message with total excitement. Every time we do pick up that magic little box, it has the possibility of transporting us to an enchanted location. It imparts to you a license to create. So come on, create something. No more tiptoeing about, just go out and do it. Now, my friends, our time is up for today. Matt and I certainly hope we have given you a quantity of new, powerful ideas to try out. Now, if this has been of value to you, please give us the old thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. By all means, let your friends know that we offer experienced advice which will absolutely help everyone become a better photographer and, most importantly, have more fun. So please keep those comments coming in. We appreciate them all. I hope you have found it. This is the absolute best vlog that you have seen this week. Now, my friends, the tip of the old bowler cap to you. Until we meet again on screen, thanks for tuning in, and cheerio.